This is one of those games I actually got to try back in its original early access release, and when I saw it back then, I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty dang promising. All they need to do is add in a bunch of content, add in some variety so it doesn't get boring so quick, and make sure that the content is actually polished enough that people want to play through it and it's not frustrating. Little did I know back then that they would actually create what is easily my favorite roguelite of all freaking time. Michael here with an impressions review of Dead Cells, which I originally played in the early access release and have been following it since its development cycle. I'm a little bit late to the 1.0 review here, but again, they've actually been updating the game. They're adding in more content, and they're actually working on a 2.0 patch for the game, which adds in a bunch of other stuff and modifies what's here. So basically, stuff in this review might end up being out of date eventually, but I wanted to do a review for it, so we're gonna do it now. Anyways, this is an action platformer roguelite that actually advertised itself originally as a Metrovania roguelite, so it has some weird progression elements that are kind of very Metrovania-esque, as in you unlock abilities to access new areas and stuff like that. They've kind of stripped out most of that out of the early access releases, so for the most part, that's not 100% true anymore, but it still has some interesting unlocking mechanics and stuff like that. Also, a quick editor's note, I just want to make sure that it's clear that I did get a review key for this game all the way back in its early access release. Wasn't 100% sure if I made it clear within the way I was saying it, because I was like, I got this in early access or whatever. So just to make it clear so that I'm, complying with everything. However, this game, while it is absolutely fantastic, it's not for everyone. There are going to be some people out there that definitely do not like it. It is a more difficult style of game as well, and it does have some glaring issues that I'm not particularly a fan of. Luckily for me, it doesn't particularly take away from the entire experience, but it is something that can set people off. Anyways, let's go ahead and go over that in this video, because I'll be talking about why I actually strongly recommend this for anybody who likes roguelites and action platformers, because it's still fantastic even with those issues. But yeah, first off, we're on PC, so we're going to be talking about the graphics options and such. So we get our video options here, full screen, windowed, and borderless mode. So that is quite nice. You also get VSync and bright flashes, which you can disable, which is super, super nice, because this is actually a health risk for most people. And so this would actually be really, really nice if all games actually had this option, but unfortunately it's a very uncommon, so it's actually nice that this game actually has that. It can also help with kind of visuals and stuff like that and kind of make the game less visually cluttered. We'll talk about that a little bit later though, because that has to do with the art style, and it's not particularly amazing in some cases to where it can make certain things really hard to read. Again, we'll talk about that. And then pixelized font, you can actually turn on the original pixeled font if you end up enjoying that more. I find it hard to read, especially inside gameplay, so I prefer their cleaner cut version, which I'm using now. One thing to note here is that it does not have a resolution option, which I would love to have, because if you go into windowed mode, you'll notice a little bit of weirdness, as in you don't actually get to select what resolution you want, and instead you can resize it, but you also get these weird black borders. Sometimes it makes double borders, and I don't think it supports ultra wide either, so if I end up going over here, you also get some graphical glitches here and there. But yeah, I think it's stuck at a certain limited range, and so if you go over that range, then you end up getting black bars, so to keep that in mind whenever you're going into anything else. Menus do have full mouse and keyboard support, although you can't click on the controls down at the bottom, which is usually what I do. Normally when I'm navigating menus, I like to use just the mouse, so I like to right click to exit or something like that. That's what I'm used to for most games these days, and this doesn't support that. You have to use escape, which, I mean, that's standard, but it's just kind of annoying. They don't have other options here. I do mostly play with the gamepad though, and I do strongly recommend a gamepad. As for sound, we get multiple volume sliders. It's super, super nice. Music volume is pretty quiet by default, but you can end up turning it up if you want. You also have a mute option, which is strange. It's so quiet. So yeah, that's a thing you can do. Also, you have language settings as well. There's not a lot of text in the game, and it's not particularly crucial, although I guess reading the abilities is kind of crucial. So I guess it is more crucial than I think it is. But you have multiple, or a nice selection of languages here, and you can also download other languages through the Steam Workshop, which actually has mod support as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Controls here, you can enable vibration, which doesn't always work on my controller, but I think that has to do with my OS more than that. Move with D-pad, you'll need this on. Controlling with the control stick or joystick is absolutely impossible in this game because of the way the movement works. I'll talk about that a little bit later because it is one of my few complaints of this game. And you can rebind absolutely everything, which is super, super nice, including double binding on the gamepad, which I don't recommend because it has some weird glitchiness to happen. Sometimes you'll jump and use your primary weapon, or sometimes it'll do both. Sometimes it just won't do anything at all, so I don't necessarily recommend it, but it's an option, I guess. If it works for you somehow, then you can do that. And then you also have mouse and keyboard as well. You can also lock the mouse to the window, which I actually recommend because if you click off of the screen, you'll lose control of the game. It does not support background input, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I understand why that's not there. I would like that as an option, though. It would be kind of nice. Aside from that, you also get some weird gameplay and aesthetic changes, such as your diet. I have it on Fruitarian because I like fruit and there's watermelon in the game. So basically, you can end up selecting through that. And you also get some gameplay stuff here. The kind of notable ones here is the Activate Steam Cloud Synchronization. If you plan to play this game offline and you've never played it online, you'll want to disable this. I don't know if they've ever fixed this or not, but basically, when I tried to play this on a new save without being connected online, it wouldn't let me actually start the map. It just kept saying that the save wasn't found or something like that. So basically, if you want to play offline, you might have to disable this. Not a big deal for most people, but there you go. And then you can activate the mod interface, which allows you to enable and disable mods between the kind of playthroughs that you end up going through. We'll talk about that a little bit later, and then streaming integration and stuff like that. Anyways, let's actually go into the gameplay here, because you can actually look at the patch notes if you want to as well. But yeah, here we go. We got our normal mode, which is going to be your standard kind of progression mode. And like, this is the kind of like standard way to play the game. I don't know if you unlock more modes, by the way, as you progress through the game, but this is what I have unlocked. And then you have streaming mode, which allows you to integrate with things like Twitch and such, and make it so that your chat can screw you over whenever they want, or praise you, I guess, but that's pretty rare that anybody has a community that's nice. And then you also have daily challenge as well, which is like a randomized map that everyone gets to play on, and you can see a little leaderboard on the right side. So if you want to try their little daily challenges, you can do that. You also have save slots, which is super, super nice. I'm personally not using them, but if you wanted to start from scratch, you can actually do that, which is super, super cool. A lot of these types of games do not have this option, so having that available, especially inside the menu like this, is super nice. Anyways, let's go ahead and continue my game. I'm going to go ahead and immediately go to my restart option so I don't spoil anything. And we're going to go back to the Prisoner's Quarter, which is where you begin the game. So here we go. We are a little blob, and we go into our dead body, and no, we are no longer a dead body. We are no longer a dead cell. We are a living cell. Anyways, we got our dead man's bag. As you play through the game, you do unlock a bunch of different passive stuff you end up getting. Wow, what am I looking for? Passive progression type stuff. So that was one of them, to where there was a little bag that basically has some gold from whenever I died. That was just the gold that I had from when I restarted. But here we actually have all of my visual representation for the stuff I have unlocked. There's a lot of stuff I still have not unlocked. Most of it is varieties of one another. So you have like a bunch of crossbows. Some of them just act differently, other ones explode, and so you actually have a bunch of different good variety of weapons and stuff like that. And then down here is where you have your cells that you end up unlocking once you beat the game. I'm not good enough for that, but that's how you actually increase the difficulty. So it's not like a one playthrough game. You can actually play through it multiple times and end up doing stuff over and over again at increased difficulties. Over here is where you can actually access your daily challenge as well. So instead of just having to do it through the menu, you can actually do it in here. Now, when you start off the game, you originally just start off with a sword and a shield, but you actually can unlock passives that actually make it so you unlock random weapons here and there. So I ended up getting a blood sword and a torch thing, a firebrand, which is kind of nice. There's a teleport point. Aside from that, you actually start off with some fairly standard platforming stuff. So you actually have your movement left, right, you can crouch, and you can also jump. You also start off with a double jump, and you can grab onto ledges as well. As you progress through the game, you do unlock a bunch of different abilities. I don't know if this ground slam was originally unlocked or not. I think it might have been unlocked through a passive thing, or maybe I ended up starting off with it. I don't know. I use it non-stop now. So if you unlock it later on, I don't know. It's my favorite ability in the game, is being able to ground slam, because you can use it to deal damage, you can use it to kind of stun enemies, and it's just really, really nice. You can also roll as well. Can I not reclose doors? I've never found a way to reclose doors. We can just smash through doors and stun enemies and stuff like that. And there's actually a lot of little interesting little interactions and stuff like that I'll talk about a little bit later when it comes into these different abilities. But as you're progressing through the game, I did mention some of the kind of Metrovania style elements of the game. You do end up unlocking different abilities, such as I have the ability to run up walls, or I have the ability to grow plants out of certain globs and things like that. So you do kind of get that, and there is some progression as you're going through each different stage in the form of 3 different stats as well, which here's a scroll of power, which allows me to choose one to increase. So you get brutality, tactics, and survival, and different weapons you end up finding will end up having different effects on these sort of things. So basically, I'm going to go with tactics because I like the tactic style weapons, and it also increases your health as well, which is quite vital. And if you try to increase one stat too much, then you won't get as much of a health bonus and stuff like that. So it's actually kind of nice to be able to go through and upgrade different stats. So for example, I just upgraded my tactics, which means now it only increases my HP by 26% instead of the 40%, I think is what it is by default. So I can end up selecting a different one if I wanted to, or I can end up making the trade-off of being like, oh, I want my tactics weapons to be more powerful. And so there you go. And the kind of stat that they're affected by is nicely encoded by the little color that you'll see on the weapons and stuff like that in the bottom left. There's also gadgets as well. Is this better than this? I don't know, I kind of like making people bleed, so we're going to keep the bleeding blade. So yeah, aside from that, you end up having your random generation and stuff like that. Here's a little lore bit as well, another randomized thing. It's like, a prisoner scratched some words on the wall. Why? filling the prison with Enoch. The message is unfinished. I assume they mean innocent. Whoa. Yeah, so there's some mystery here and there, and you end up finding these little tiny secret areas, and there's some food, a watermelon! Eating it. You can recover health and stuff like that. So you'll actually find through the random generation and stuff like that, the random generation is obviously randomly generated as you end up going through it. This isn't one of those games to where they have like predefined sets. There are some, especially when it comes down to boss areas and certain areas with puzzles and things like that, in those kind of lore bit areas to where it's like, oh, what's going on here? And it has like a little bit of story and stuff like that. Also, the firebrand can't be set off in water. I like that. This game has a lot of little small polish and stuff like that that I really, really enjoy. But again, the random generation, for the most part, it is obviously randomly generated, and as you go through, I don't want to go to the sewers. Screw that, that's stinky. These are little teleport points as well, which allow you to go through. Talking about the random generation, though, it is obviously randomly generated, which I've said 3 times now, which is obviously a random generation of my speech. And so certain areas you're going to see that look very, very similar, but they're different. And most of it does kind of come down to these kind of corridors. But as you progress through the areas and stuff like that, each different area actually has like different algorithms for the way that it kind of randomly generates the area. And so different areas actually tend to have a lot of interesting design to them. And I actually like the random generation in here. And one of the key points, oh, what ability do I want? We could use this one because it's funny, but I'm going to grab a bomb. But they do a good job with the random generation of allowing you to kind of have really interesting areas. Oh yeah, I want that. Mine. Explosive arrows. And so the random generation does make it so that it is fairly interesting to go through different areas, although some areas do get samey very, very quickly, especially when you get into some of the later areas that do take a long time to get through, especially when if you're like me and like to explore areas to the fullest. But one good thing they do is they actually have these little teleport points that allow you to get pretty much everywhere whenever you want, which is pretty nice. I actually cleared this entire area without really even trying. And as you see, the game is actually fairly quick. We'll talk about that in a second. But first off, let's go ahead and go into the progression and stuff like that, because that's where we're going here. And between each of the areas, you'll get this little area to where you can end up progressing your unlocks after a boss and stuff like that. You also get a different unlock thing. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Hopefully I get to a boss in this video. But here we get some passive upgrades. I'll just throw some points into there. But as you're playing through, you notice that I was unlocking some cells, these little blue cell things end up dropping and then floating towards you and stuff. And so you unlock these, and they allow you to unlock different things to go into the random generation. So you unlock passive upgrades. These are just general upgrades that are there permanently. And so you can unlock things like, for example, if I go ahead and show my unlocks and stuff like that. So random starter bow. So it'll randomly start me off with a random bow and a random melee weapon. That's why I had the weapons at the start that I did. And then you also unlock different weapons, grenades, melee weapons, different shields and things that go into the random generation. And you unlock different upgrades that you can choose a little bit later on called Mutations, which we'll be talking about in a second. Now, for me, my main problem with this progression system is that it takes a really, really long time to unlock some stuff. And I understand that's because you're supposed to play through the game hundreds and hundreds of times. And I've only done like 30 playthroughs or something like that, or 30 runs or something like that. So, you know, obviously it's designed so that you can play through the game multiple times. So a lot of these items, they're fairly interesting as well. Like you have a good variety of weapons. I'll talk about that a little bit later when we're in the other area. But there's actually a good variety. But to unlock that variety, it takes a little bit. And so when you first start off the game, you're not going to have a lot of variety, which is a little bit unfortunate. But here you're able to actually change your modifiers. As with a random generation, you also have randomly generated weapons. So they'll have different abilities on it. So for example, right now it has launch grenade. That's not very useful on an explosive weapon. So I'll go ahead and re-roll it. And it's like, oh, now victims burn. So if they somehow survive the giant explosion that I caused, then now they will burn alive, which is super awesome. You can also add in a plus quality, which increases the stats of weapons. As you're progressing through the game, you'll actually notice that it's like blood sword 1+. So you actually unlock, like the grenade, for example, is swarm 2. So you can actually unlock a little plus modifier to make it so it's a little bit better and kind of randomize your stats and stuff like that. And you can also make it so that as you're progressing through the game, you don't necessarily want to stick with the same weapon because you actually find better and better versions of them. Anyways, here are the actual mutations. These are kind of how you can kind of augment the way your playstyle works. I personally always go with like efficiency. I'm going to go ahead and grab Gadar's Oris Lee 0 times whatever. It basically saves you when you end up dying, because I'm kind of trying to do a video and stuff like that, so I'll probably end up dying scrupulously here. But you can actually unlock a bunch of different little mutations, stuff like that. One complaint again is it takes a really long time to unlock these, and in order to unlock things you do have to find blueprints, but these allow you to kind of change your playstyle. So for example, it's like, oh, you can reduce the cooldown on grenades, so if you're somebody who likes to use grenades, you can do that. Or it's like, oh, necromancy, I like this ability, recovers health whenever an enemy dies. So you can actually use different abilities like that to kind of augment how you go through. This is also how you heal. You also have a little healing potion, but I haven't had to use it because I'm not dying, which is kind of nice. But yeah, so to be able to unlock stuff, you actually have to find blueprints while you're playing through the game. And so when you kill enemies, they have random drops, as again with the random generation and stuff. Here is actually one set, for example. They do have these little sets. I was talking about how they have little set areas and stuff like that. They do have a lot of little platforming sections and little secrets. And they also have these little time doors as well, which you can go to. So this one, it's like, oh, this door sealed 1 minute ago. I'll talk about that relevance a little bit in a second. But first off, talking about the progression and stuff like that, going into how you unlock stuff, you actually you don't have everything to unlock. You have the general upgrades you can unlock, but generally speaking, you don't have all of the stuff that you can unlock. So what you actually have to do is you have to play through, and as you're killing enemies, you'll randomly find blueprints, and then those blueprints allow you to unlock them with cells. Certain ones will automatically be unlocked when you find them, especially ones found through things like secrets. For example, there's actually a secret section in this area that I can end up showing off that I already unlocked that actually gave me this explosive bow, I believe. And so the reason why I'm using this is because it automatically unlocks it, and so it's automatically added into your random generation. But most things you have to find the blueprint and then unlock it with cells. And gathering cells, it does get easier as you progress through and get better and better at the game as you unlock more and more areas. Ooh, a sign! Live target training. Cool. I bet it gives me a bow. Does it give me... Oh, ice shard. That's not a bow. That is a cool weapon though. And secrets. Hey. I'm not going to show off that secret. But yeah, you end up unlocking these blueprints, and it takes a really long time to get cells. As you go through, and obviously as you're like killing bosses and getting farther and farther, it does get easier, and you do have the kind of progressive unlocks that make that an easier proposition. But again, it takes a while, and so when you first start off the game, it took me like 12 runs or something like that, which is a long time. Like a run is actually pretty dang long. Like I will not finish this run in this playthrough unless I die randomly. And so like runs are actually pretty long. Like it's an hour per run usually for me because I like to explore everything and unlock as much as I can and do as well as I can as well. So that takes a long time. It took me like 12 runs, which is like 12 hours into the game to actually unlock another mutation. So again, some of the progression takes a while. Now, talking about the kind of playstyle of this game, you'll notice that this has actually been fairly quick as I'm going through. And this is actually one thing to note about the gameplay is, you know, I didn't mention it earlier because it's kind of fairly obvious when people are playing through it, but talking about it in a critical standpoint is this is actually a very fast-paced game, and the way that you're playing through it only gets faster and faster, especially when you unlock things like colorless weapons and things like that, which are basically the game's legendaries to where they're not restricted by the stats. I was talking about how the stats basically have different alignments, so the weapons and stuff like that are aligned to... Ooh, I found a secret. Sweet, mine! That was 100% accidental, which is actually how I found most of the secrets in this game, which is 100% accidental. I did find one secret, and then I was like, oh man, oh, that's cool. I don't know what to do with it, but that's cool. And then later on, I found out what to do with it. I'm like, all right, how do I find this? And I actually had to look up how the random generation works so I could end up finding it. And I ended up not following that random generation order, so I ended up running around this map for a while. It was annoying. I don't know how long it was. Here's another thing. You have to get the gardener's keys, which is secret stuff. There's an elite enemy, which will actually give me a trinket, which is pretty nice because I haven't shown off trinkets yet. I also get these different gadgets and stuff like that, which I haven't been able to talk to because for some reason, the random generation right now is not giving me trinkets or whatever they're called. Not trinkets. I don't know what they're actually called. I'm just going to call them gadgets because... I don't know, Inspector Gadget's nice. But yeah, you end up unlocking these grenades, you end up getting, oops, I landed right on spikes. You end up unlocking things like turrets and stuff like that, but you'll notice that this game has been fairly quick, and the cooldowns on things like my abilities and my weapons and stuff like that are pretty much non-existent. They're pretty dang quick, so if I want to throw out a grenade, it's only 10 seconds so I can throw out the other grenade, and you can actually augment it so it can be even less. So for example, if I end up unlocking the efficiency, for example, grab that secret just because I can, if I end up unlocking the efficiency augment, I can actually get my turrets to cool down in less than a second and make it so that the kind of turrets and stuff like that are something that I end up wanting to use non-stop and actually augment my entire gameplay style to that sort of playstyle, which is actually kind of nice and allows you to kind of mix up and match how you're playing through it. But the gameplay is actually fairly dang quick when you're playing through it, and while I'm using even a slow weapon like this explosive crossbow, that's probably one of the slowest dang weapons in the game. I'm actually going to get rid of it just to show some variety. I should be swapping through a bunch of different weapons just to kind of show off how they all work. But here's a freezing bow, which allows me to charge up or end up freezing enemies and stuff like that. Freezing enemies is probably one of my favorite abilities inside this game. Being able to freeze enemies is super awesome and just makes things a little bit more interesting. This one has a shotgun function into it, so I won't always be freezing enemies as well. Now, talking about some of the, fast-pacedness of the game, you are going to be running through and kind of killing enemies really, really quickly, which means you're not only going to be killing enemies very, very quickly, but they're also going to kill you very, very quickly, which kind of runs into some deceptive problems within the game. I have noticed some people, especially early on, they say, oh, like, wow, this game's really, really easy, because this is one of those games that's deceptively hard. When you're doing really, really well, you're gonna notice it because you're like running through just destroying enemies and having absolutely no problem whatsoever, and just your full health just destroying everything. But the second you screw up, all of a sudden you have no health left and you're like, oh my god, what happened? And if you screw up on like a boss or something, or maybe you're in a really dangerous spot, if you screw up, you're dead immediately, and there is no kind of escape from that. And so that is kind of like one of those situations to where the game is deceptively difficult, and personally I enjoy that a lot. Some people aren't. Some people aren't going to be able to keep up with it, and one of the main problems with this, going into the things that are kind of annoying, is that the movement speed and the movement system, while it is fairly fluid, like running around and jumping and stuff like that, I have absolutely no problem with it. Normally, by the way, there's a boss here that you have to use to actually unlock this ability, talking about the progression and stuff. But the movement and stuff like that is pretty dang fluid, but I have learned to use the D-pad, because if you use the joystick, you'll accidentally jump on ledges, accidentally down smash whenever you're trying to use abilities. Here's this weapon, by the way. I'm about to swap it out, because I like the rapier. Yeah, so, while you're going through, it's fairly dang quick, but you also run into a situation to where, sometimes things are too quick and you'll end up latching onto a ledge you didn't mean to, and it can end up getting you killed, or you'll accidentally use an ability or something like that, which is mostly on you when you end up accidentally using something, because the controls work. It's not like the controls are bad or anything like that, but it is one of those cases to where, things are so quick that anything can happen. One little mistake can end up leaving you with no health or whatever, and I have to heal because I'm just messing up over and over again. These enemies teleport and they follow me, and they're very, very rude. They also take falling damage from themselves just jumping off ledges, apparently, which is hilarious. But yeah, you can just end up dying immediately, and that is kind of somewhat annoying, as in, you'll be doing really, really well and have a really, really good run, and then you just make one mistake and you're dead. Some people won't like that. Personally, I'm fine with it just because of the game, the game style and how it is very, very quick, and it kind of, relies on you kind of being as good as you possibly can. I kind of like that. But it is deceptively difficult, because it is a game that will just randomly kill you whenever it wants to. Which, again, some people may not like, some people will. I'm actually just going to try and speed along because I know the boss is up there and I'm kind of running out of time here. But yeah, when it comes down to the gameplay and stuff like that, though, I really enjoy this game, and I really, really like the idea that it's really, really fast. The cooldowns are really, really short, and one of the cases later in the game is that you're gonna want to be using your gadgets as much as possible. I'm kind of annoyed that this run hasn't been giving me anything. I've only had this grenade since we started, and that's kind of annoying. I really, really like using turrets and kind of using the different types of abilities that they have. Like, they have a feather that allows you to fly. I was talking about it being pretty funny. I really like that ability, and one thing that's kind of nice, especially about the random generation, is that a lot of the... Wait, it's going to take me to the ramparts, isn't it? Oh my god, we're not even to the actual boss yet. Dang. I'll run this a little bit longer than... I should have just like sped through the areas and gone as fast as I possibly could. That probably would have been smart. Also, one thing you have to know is that it requires you to spend all of your cells, which is a little bit annoying. I will get to a boss before I end this video, because I do have more things to say about this. One thing that is nice, though, is that there is a lot of variety within the weapons. It takes a while to unlock things. It does take quite a long time, but depending on your playstyle, you have a lot of options to actually choose whatever you want to end up using. So I'm going to end up increasing this. Oh, I don't want more ammo. Damage, victims burn, slow down when thought... Whatever, sure, I'll keep that. Sometimes random generation hates me, as we've seen with me not being able to have any abilities. But there you go. I just unlocked this survival mutation, which ended up immediately appearing here. Extended healing. You heal me more over time, which is nice, I guess. I'm going to grab efficiency so that things cool down, even though I only have a grenade, and that doesn't actually affect grenades. But I really, really want a turret, and I'll eventually find one. I probably should have bought one at one of the shops, but I just didn't pay attention. Also, where did all my gold go? I don't know where all my gold went. Did I just not get gold, or am I spending gold somewhere? I don't know. I feel like I normally have more gold. Oh well, whatever. But yeah, so for the most part, they give you a good amount of variety, and they do give you multiple ways to kind of unlock different abilities and stuff. And so when you're going through and actually like wanting to, use a certain set, like for example, I had a setup to where I wanted to be using some sort of shotgun ability, such as the heavy crossbow, and I wanted to use a freeze bow or a freeze weapon of some sort, or like a freeze attack. And so I was able to actually set that up. Even though you may not find the exact weapon you're looking for, the weapon variety is enough that you can end up finding different types of weapons that end up having different abilities that maybe you'll end up wanting. Like if you want freeze, for example, you can either try to roll for an augmentation on it that would end up having that freeze ability, or you can end up finding a different type of weapon. Like maybe you want the freeze bow specifically for whatever you're using, but maybe, you know, you end up finding like the ice attack or something like that instead. You know, it'll still work within your kind of build status. And one of the things that's actually fairly interesting about this is that it's not a game that relies 100% on random generation. Like, yes, there is some random generation here, and it can end up screwing you over quite a bit, especially when you're going through and you need like a specific weapon for whatever you're trying to do, and then you just don't end up getting it for whatever reason. Like for me, I'm not getting any turrets, which I actually enjoy turrets. I don't need turrets, but I enjoy using turrets, and they're actually fairly helpful on bosses specifically. But, you know, sometimes random generation just won't give it to you. But generally speaking, it's pretty good about it, especially when it comes down to the shops and stuff like that. I still don't know where all my gold went. I feel like I spent my gold somewhere. Oh, yeah, I spent it reforging my weapon. I just wasn't paying attention because I'm trying to do a video at the same time. But it's kind of nice to play a game, especially when it comes down to the difficulty of the game. I have to go down here eventually on one of these, and I don't know which one it is. I'm trying to just speed along so we can get to the boss, so I can show off one of the bosses. The first boss is probably the most boring boss. I probably should have taken an alternate route just to show off one of the other bosses that's more interesting. But again, I want to show it off before I end the video. I might just end up doing a cut to it. But yeah, it's kind of nice to play one of these style of roguelike games, and one of my favorite parts about it, aside from the gameplay just being fast, fluid, and fun, like it's just incredibly satisfying to tear through enemies and to also get torn apart by enemies. For as weird as that sounds, it is actually fun to fail because it's one of those games where it doesn't feel, most of the time at least. I will talk about a complaint in a second. Oh, that's not where it is. There is a secret there, but I'm not going to bother with it. There are some cases to where enemies do attack, and you can't necessarily see when they're going to attack, and it's definitely a problem when you end up fighting bosses for the first time, especially. There is some trial and error when it comes down to enemies, learning their kind of movement patterns and learning how they end up attacking, and learning certain things that you can dodge as well. I was talking about how you can dodge pretty much everything, but sometimes there's just one or two abilities that you just cannot dodge, and the game does not signify what those are, so you actually have to like fight the enemy enough times to actually learn what those are, which is fairly annoying. And the art style as well, going back into my complaints of the game, aside from the movement kind of being weird and glitchy sometimes, like I have actually glitched through walls and things like that sometimes as well. Like I have fallen through platforms that aren't supposed to be passed through and stuff like that. I've never fallen off the map. I think it has enough detection that does that, but like for example, I'll be here and then just fall through the map sometimes, which is, it's fairly rare. It's probably only happened like 3 or 4 times or something like that, and in the amount of time that I played the game, that's not too bad, but it is there nonetheless. And sometimes I'll end up dodging through an enemy and then still get hit by his attack. Like its hitbox just ends up staying longer than the attack animation. And again, this just comes down to kind of learning the enemies and learning their attack patterns and stuff like that. Here's a cursed chest. Sure, let's go for it. Bite my hand, give me something good. He gave me some goods. So, just one hit, you're dead. Illuminate enemies left to curse. Cool. So I just got a curse, which allows me to actually just get some bonus stuff. We'll do that. Which allows me to basically get some extra stuff, but if I get hit, then I die immediately, and I have to kill 10 enemies without getting hit to remove the curse, which I might just end up dying. We'll see how this goes. I mean, if I get to the boss and I'm one shot, then that won't go so well, because the boss actually has an attack that will hit you no matter what. And that's another complaint with the game as well. There are certain enemies where it's just undodgeable. Like, it'll just have an undodgeable attack, which is incredibly annoying. And it feels just like lackluster design in some cases. Oh, I just got hit. Dang it. Well, yeah, I'll end up doing a jump cut to the boss and stuff like that, just so I can end up showing off the boss in a second. But yeah, there are certain attacks to where you just will end up just taking damage, and there's no way that you can end up avoiding the damage whatsoever, which is, again, fairly annoying, especially when you get later into the game to where a single attack could end up just killing you outright. So that is somewhat annoying. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and speed through, just try and get to the boss. I will show off this weapon a little bit, though. This is a fairly decent weapon. I've said mostly what I wanted to say. I mean, overall, it's a freaking fantastic game, and I freaking love it. And I feel like the gameplay is really, really fast and fluid, and a lot of it complements this. And there's a good variety as well. I didn't talk about... I may as well talk about this before we get to the boss. I mean, I'll have my closing comments during the boss, because bosses take a while to kill. I'll go with tactics again, because I have a bow. You can actually swap over this weapon as well, so I want to swap that to over there. Yeah, so basically the levels and stuff like that, the level design is actually really cool, as in the random generation and stuff like that actually makes it so that when you're traveling through areas, each area actually has different routes that you can go. And so I think I showed it off when we were first running through the area, because I think I fully cleared it. But then there was the option to go through the toxic sewers or go through the, however you end up pronouncing the other area. But yeah, you end up going through and it's like, oh, hey, you know, you can go this route or you can go this other route, which makes it so that your pathways are actually more interesting. You actually get different bosses as well, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. You can end up getting different bosses. You can choose the path that you take and different enemies that you'll run into, and you can choose a bunch of different, kind of just choose the path that you want to end up taking. I'm not going to go that way because that's going to lead to the sewers, I believe. And there are different tells as well. Like, you're unlocking different abilities as you go along, and those different abilities will allow you to take different paths to actually take those different routes, which kind of goes into the interesting sort of stuff. I should have dodged there. I'm just playing terrible today, and I don't know why. Normally, I'm pretty good at this game. Well, until I get to the final boss, which I die at multiple times. I can't beat it for some reason. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and, you know, cut this short a little bit and just go ahead and jump cut forward so that we can end up seeing the boss, because it is sort of a important mechanic, because it does kind of play into some of the kind of the annoyances that I've had with this game. So I'll be back in a minute. So as I'm playing through these areas, I just remembered one thing that I didn't really mention, is that each area also has its own mechanics. So one area has like a bunch of elevators, one area has like a light and darkness mechanic and stuff like that. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I just thought I may as well mention it because I'm kind of bored just running through by myself. I'm going through for the simple sake of just doing the video. There is a chest, by the way. Sometimes they have traps inside of them instead of items. So that was decent timing, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. That was all I wanted to say for the second. I don't know. I'm just like trying to go through and get to this boss, because after I'm done with this, I have other stuff that I have to record. So I'm like trying to rush through and do this as fast as I can, and it's taking a while. So another thing I thought of when I was going through here is that some of the weapons are maybe not as interesting as I would like them to be. I was talking about the variety and having a lot of different weapons. There are certain weapons I just don't like particularly very much, like the whip, for example. I did like it at the start because whips are freaking awesome in Castlevania. But yeah, certain weapons are just not as fun. I was talking about how there's, you know, a decent variety of weapons. Oh my goodness, he did a lot of health to me, or health damage. I survived. Okay, I might just die while I'm doing this. Oh my goodness, no. Oh my goodness, I almost screwed that up massively while I was trying to talk about this. Anyways, there are certain weapons that just are not as efficient. Now, supposedly they are working on balance updates and things like that, so this may not be an issue in the future. But certain weapons just aren't as interesting to use as others. For example, the whip, which is basically, it's a weapon that just auto-locks onto targets. But for me, it's just kind of boring because all you're doing is just tapping the weapon. It doesn't really have a lot of tactics to it. You can use it to attack through walls and stuff like that, but there are other weapons that can do that as well. And so it's just kind of, I'm not a big fan of some of the weapons and stuff like that, which, I don't know, that's just a comment. And that's mostly to playstyle. Again, it does a good job of like randomly generating things so that you can, oh my goodness, I am taking so much damage from everything and just screwing up massively. I might never get to this boss, and I'm trying to get there. I don't know why I'm playing so bad today. Anyways, I'm sorry this jump cut has become more than just a jump cut, and it is now just a thing that's over and over again. I'm just gonna skip things. Just screw it. Bye. Just doing another jump cut just to show off another area that I went to. I decided to take a different path. I unlocked a time door! So one of the interesting things about this game is that, you know, I'm talking about it being very, very fast paced, but I like to explore everything and stuff like that. But since I'm just kind of like running through, oh, a marksman bow. I didn't know I could unlock special bows like this. Anyways, the game rewards you for both playstyles, as in if you want to go through and like explore every single nook and cranny, the game will, you know, obviously reward you with that, with different items, different gold and stuff like that. But it will also reward you for going through and being quick and fast and trying to figure out things and, you know, find all the secrets and stuff like that. So like going through and doing a really quick run like this, to where I'm just kind of like running through as fast as possible, actually isn't like a detriment to the amount of stuff I'm going to end up getting or my possibilities of success either. As in, you know, you get those little time doors, for example, and there's a bunch of different little tiny little tactics you can use while you're going really quickly and actually kind of like almost speed run through different areas and stuff like that, which I really enjoy that. I really like it, being able to kind of choose the way that I play. Again, this area has a bunch of elevators, so I just kind of skip over by down dashing. Down dashing is seriously my favorite ability in this game. It is better than all the weapons combined. It is just fun and hilarious because you just go, you know. There is sort of a falling thing where if you fall too far, you do like freeze up for a second, like get a stun. Oh, shiz. I forgot I'm not supposed to attack him in the back. Ouch. That almost killed me. Talking about the, you know, this is one of the later areas in the game. And so basically, you know, when you're going through it, I was talking about it being deceptively difficult, as in you can die extremely quickly. So like me screwing up and hitting it in the back almost killed me. And so stuff like that can kill you very, very easily. And it's only exemplified when you're trying to just speed through things like I am and just kind of go through as fast as possible. Whoop. I do need to kill some enemies though, because I do need gold so that I can do stuff, but I'm just going to skip those one because they look too dangerous at the moment. Anyways, I'm going to jump to the boss eventually. Wow, this has become like half of the review. I apologize for that. All right. Finally got there. I struggled. I don't know why. I am not playing this game particularly great today, so I apologize for that, but I did get 44 cells, showing off that you do end up getting more and more cells as you get farther along. I chose to take the more difficult path because I'm like, oh, I'll just go ahead and go through here and get some stuff, and that was a bad idea. Quite frankly, I'm gonna go ahead and unlock some more weapons and stuff like that I can end up finding. Now, one thing that was interesting is that it drops these whenever you unlock stuff, so that's kind of why I'm doing it. Enemy with flammable oil, or inflammable oil. Wait, victims freeze other enemies. No, that's not gonna be helpful. I'll grab this one. There we go, and I'll just sell these because I don't need them anymore. So yeah, basically I finally got to the boss. It took me a while because, again, runs in this game are fairly long, which, ooh, there we go. Actually, that'll be better. Runs in this game are not, like, slow, as in it actually takes quite a while to get through a section of this game. So I'm just gonna grab health just for the sake of it. I'm not gonna be continuing this run after this video. But yeah, runs are actually fairly long, which again, some people are not gonna like that. Runs can be quick, as in running through, like you can complete each area in under 2 minutes. That's what the time door is. And I took 12 minutes here because I'm just slow and I had to be a little bit cautious when I was going through that last area because I kept screwing up, which was a little bit annoying. Anyways, here's a boss, which I don't like bosses, to be honest, which I'm showing this mechanic because it has some very glaring issues with it. There are different setups and stuff like that you can use to kind of make bosses easier, and there's a lot of tools. This one's the easiest boss in the game. This is like the first boss you'll ever fight, technically. There is technically a mini boss, which is just an elite enemy, but he has things like the shield, for example, and all the bosses have an issue to where they have a certain ability that you just cannot dodge. And so luckily I ended up getting Wolf Trap, which is pretty dang useful on this guy. But he'll actually get that shield and then he'll use a dash attack. The randomization when it comes down to the attacks they use doesn't keep in mind of what you can and cannot dodge. And so, for example, the shield, for example, if you're just in that area, it will just deal damage to you. And you can't actually dash through him completely without some sort of extension. And so basically, no matter what, if he dashes towards you, because he does have a dash skill, he'll start using it in a little bit. If he ends up using that dash skill while he has the shield on, you're going to take damage no matter what, which makes it so that squishy sort of builds and things like that, to where you're just kind of like stacking on damage or running through very, very quickly, becomes exponentially difficult and potentially impossible just based on whatever the randomization of the enemies wants to be. And this can happen out in the wild as well when you're fighting just randomized enemies and stuff like that as well, to where just they'll end up using a certain attack pattern that will just get you killed no matter what you do. And there's literally nothing you can do about it. It's less so in the world because you can take your time and be tactical about it, and you can observe your environment and use the environment to your best ability. But when it comes to bosses, you're locked in an arena like this. And so, as you see, my dodge doesn't actually reach the length of that shield, by the way, just to clarify on that. So maybe there is a way I'm able to dodge it and I just don't know about it. Like, you can double jump and dodge through it, I believe. But like the ability to do so is so vague and just so like precise that it makes it really, really annoying, especially when this is supposed to be the first boss you're doing. I'm preventing him from jumping, like, completely, which is nice. And there you go. He got that shield again. He would have jumped at me and I would have been able to not dodge the damage that he does. But yeah, so these are bosses. I mean, overall, though, I freaking love this game. Getting into my conclusion is... Oh, Jesus. You can also accidentally do shit like that. That was me, though. That was 100% on me. I also don't have very good weapons, because I didn't really hunt for weapons. When you're running through as fast as possible, you really don't find a lot of good weapons and stuff like that. Normally, what you'll want to do is you'll want to go through all the time gates and special doors to end up getting all the all the passive upgrades that you possibly can. Like, you can actually get pretty dang strong just by running through, and those passive little doors and things like that actually can give you quite a lot of stats. But yeah, going back into my conclusion though, overall I enjoy this game. I think my least favorite part is the bosses. The bosses have some really cheap mechanics and it just feels lazily designed, whereas the rest of the game feels really well designed. It feels like they were like, oh, we need to have bosses because games like this have bosses, guys. And it just doesn't feel as good as polished as the rest of the game. I mean, there are some interesting things. Like, there are some interesting mechanics that the bosses have. Like, this guy's attack patterns and stuff like that are fairly interesting when you actually get into his attack patterns. But, for example, like, certain stuff I can't dodge through. Like, when he does the ground smash thing, that thing or whatever, I can't actually dodge it. I also can't dodge the damage from the shield. So, like, I have to wait for it to go away. And if I end up being in a situation to where his attack patterns just make it so I'm stuck against the wall, I can't actually dodge the damage. And it just makes it feel a little bit frustrating. And this is true of all the bosses in the game, unfortunately. At least all the bosses that I've fought. Maybe there's one or two that I haven't fought that aren't like that. But yeah, it just seems like the design kind of hiccups on the bosses in certain cases. And when you're in the overworld, it's like, or overworld, when you're in the general world or whatever, you can be like, oh, well, it's only happening because it's randomly generated, and that's just how the random generation goes down too. And that's just part of the appeal of these styles of games. It's just, oh, I want to see what the random generation does, and sometimes it'll screw me over, and people like that. That's fine. But for me, personally, that just takes this, you know, my favorite part about this game is the fact that it doesn't rely entirely on skill, although I am completely messing this up. I also don't have very strong weapons. I'm doing, like, no damage to this guy. Also, bosses have too much health. They have so much freaking health for no reason whatsoever. Yay! I got saved because of my ability. That's fine. Yeah, so basically, you know, they end up having a ton of health, which means if you don't end up finding an item, or let's say your playstyle just doesn't end up... Also, ranged weapons, they have ammo and they get stuck in enemies. And so if you end up using it too much, you can't just, like, sit there and use a bow just to attack them over and over again. You do have a limit to that. And you have to either attack the enemy or kill the enemy to actually get your ammo back, which means that double bow builds do not work particularly well sometimes. I'm hoping I can kill this guy. He's almost dead. I'm just going to play it safe so I can actually kill him. Use that so I'm safe. Let him burn alive. There we go. Jesus Christ, I had so much trouble with that. I like to explore everything because I like to get some items. Here's a colorless item, which is a shield. Oh my god, the random generation hates me in this playthrough. Jesus criminy, I've gotten nothing that I want. Anyways, I'm gonna be done with this playthrough. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts of the game. I enjoyed it a lot. I feel like it does have some design hiccups, and there are some polish issues here and there to where I kind of glitch out on walls and things like that, or get stuck on terrain and then get immediately killed. And some of the instant kill stuff is definitely not going to be something for everyone. Here's the thing to where you can unlock the rarity boost, yay, and there's other things that you can unlock as well. Ooh, nobody knows what those are. And there's a time gate, which took me so long. Actually, I could have gotten to here in 14 minutes if I had a slightly stronger weapon. I have a shield. Oh, it shoots out an arrow. That's one of its abilities. Yeah, I don't particularly like shields, but you can counter and just guard and things like that as well. But yeah, overall, it's a fantastic game with a few design hiccups, and it's definitely not going to be a game for everyone. There's going to be some sort of design elements that people are not going to be a particularly fan of. There's going to be some cases to where, can I reset this and then get the Yargs thing again? No, it is locked forever. Okay. I normally don't die like that. Normally that's not how it goes. But yeah, it's a really good game. It is really, really solid for what it is, and it has a surprising amount of variety, and the areas are nice and varied, and there's actually a varied amount of bosses. The problem with me, however, is that while I can, you know, chalk it up to the random generation for just messing me over whenever it comes down to the actual bosses kind of just having, or not the bosses, but the random areas just kind of having enemies and things like that that I just can't dodge or whatever. You know, I can chalk that up to that being just like, oh, well, it's just randomly generated that way and they didn't intend for that to be there. But the bosses are specifically designed that way, and it seems like a design choice, and it seems like a design hiccup. And so I really hope that they can fix that eventually. They are kind of working on balance patches and things like that. So hopefully that ends up being different in the future. But also, I have no useful weapons. I just grabbed the shield because I could. There we go. Oh, wow. I just guarded him and then he kicked me. Yeah! I'm not very good with the shield. Ah! 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 This is fun. So yeah, overall, it's an extremely fun game with a few hiccups here and there, and it just ends up being really, really fun. If you like these styles of games, I strongly recommend it because it is just incredibly fun and incredibly fast-paced and just... it's really unique as well. Like, I like the world that they built. I like the gameplay styles that they put into it, and it has a lot of really interesting ideas, and the amount of variety makes it so it has a lot of replay value. And the streamer stuff can be interesting as well if you're into that side of stuff, although I didn't particularly get to play with it very much because I don't have that large of a viewership. So, yeah, and the people that did watch were like, I don't really want to right now, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll just play by myself. So, yeah, that's how it goes. But yeah, overall, I freaking love this game. It is my favorite roguelike right now, and I really, really enjoy it, and I really look forward to future updates, and I really want the modding support to get better and better, because as things go along, it does have workshop support, so what you see here could not be representative of everything in the game. There could end up being more and more, and obviously I've kind of ignored some things. Did I still take damage when I do that? I did. I don't think I dodged it just in time. Nope, I think I just always take damage. Can I kill him with his own fireball? Yes. So shields, this shield at least, I'm still taking damage. That's a little bit unfortunate. This would be like one of the cases where you would build, ouch, where you would build survival and then try and survive for as long as possible. I should have kept my melee weapon because I literally have nothing that does damage right now except for my fire grenade. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this one. And of course, you can leave your thoughts and comments below. If you like my styles of content, you can check out my website at michaelpstanich.com. And of course, with YouTube being all botched and stuff like that, you can end up making the notification to have like a 10% chance to actually see whenever I make new videos, which isn't fairly often right now, but I am working on more reviews and things like that. I actually have a bunch of reviews that I'm actually reviewing right now. It is around Thanksgiving while I'm recording this, and so I don't necessarily know when this will come out or if I'll end up making this release along with the other ones or not, whatever. But yeah, I am working on more videos and stuff like that as well, and I have various other types of projects as well. So if you're interested in that, check out my website. You can also join our Discord called the Broken Chat Box, which is a gaming Discord where we talk about video games and stuff like that, and you can play with us whenever you want. We haven't been too active lately, but we are there sometimes. So yeah, there you go. And if you want to talk about Dead Cells, then go ahead and head over there. Anyways, like I said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm gonna die with cells. Kill me, I need it for the pun.